When you keep explaining yourself, you're not actually communicating. You're negotiating for permission to exist as you are. Most people don't realize this, but the habit of over-explaining doesn't come from confidence. It comes from insecurity disguised as politeness. It's that subtle fear whispering, what if they misunderstand me? What if they think I'm rude, arrogant, or selfish? So you start talking, clarifying, justifying, defending, and every sentence you add chips away at your authority. You start handing people the remote control to your sense of peace. You see, explaining yourself isn't always about clarity. Most of the time, it's about validation. You're not trying to inform. You're trying to be approved of. You're trying to be seen as the good person, the one who's reasonable, who can make others understand their intentions. But here's the truth. The moment you start seeking understanding from people who don't genuinely care to understand, you've already given away your power. Because understanding is not a gift you can demand. It's one that's offered voluntarily. Think about how often you've caught yourself saying, "Let me explain," right after someone challenges your decision. Maybe you said no to a favor. Maybe you distanced yourself from someone toxic. Maybe you made a choice that didn't fit their expectations. That tiny phrase, "let me explain," is a signal. It's you saying, "Wait, please don't think badly of me." And in that moment, you've made their opinion more important than your peace. Psychologically, this comes from conditioning. From childhood, many of us were rewarded for being agreeable. We were told to be nice, to keep everyone comfortable, to make sure no one misread our intentions. So as adults, we confuse emotional safety with external approval. We think that if people understand us, we'll be safe from rejection or conflict. But that's an illusion. No amount of explanation can protect you from being misunderstood by someone who's already decided what they want to believe. Philosophically, over-explaining is the opposite of freedom. It's the ego trying to defend its image, a desperate attempt to control perception. But perception isn't yours to control. You can't manage how people interpret your silence, your tone, your decisions. People see you through the lens of their own wounds, their own projections. And when you try to rewrite their interpretation, you end up playing a losing game. You can't make someone respect you by explaining your worth. Respect doesn't come from persuasion, it comes from presence. Now, there's a difference between explaining and communicating. Communication is about mutual understanding. It's intentional, clear, and purposeful. But explaining yourself endlessly is about emotional survival. It's a reaction rooted in fear, not confidence. Confident people know that their truth doesn't become more valid because someone else agrees with it. It's valid because it's theirs. They understand that self-respect means being okay with not being fully understood all the time. Imagine someone saying, "I just don't get why you did that." The instinctive reaction is to start talking, to fill the silence, to fix the discomfort. But what if you didn't? What if you allowed that person to sit with their confusion? What if you simply said, "You don't have to understand," and moved on? That's not arrogance. That's emotional maturity. That's the calm confidence of someone who knows their intentions and doesn't need to prove them. The truth is, people who respect you don't need long explanations. They trust your character. They assume your intentions are good even when they don't understand your actions. The ones demanding explanations are often the ones looking for a way to control or guilt trip you. They want access to your mental and emotional space so they can question, debate, or reshape it to suit their comfort. Every unnecessary explanation you offer becomes an open door for manipulation. You don't need to defend why you chose peace over drama, why you said no to a relationship that drained you, or why you set boundaries that protect your energy. You're not responsible for managing how others feel about your growth. And you certainly don't need to narrate your healing process just so someone else can approve of it. When you stop explaining yourself, something powerful happens. Your silence starts speaking for you. It communicates confidence, clarity, and emotional independence. It shows that you are not here to convince. You are here to live authentically. And ironically, that's when people start listening differently, because silence backed by conviction is louder than 1,000 words spoken in defense. In philosophy, the Stoics often taught that peace comes from focusing only on what you can control. You can't control how others interpret you. You can only control the integrity of your actions. That's what defines strength. Doing what's right even if it's misunderstood. Sometimes being misunderstood is the price of being authentic. but it's a small price compared to the exhaustion of constantly explaining yourself to people who will never see you clearly anyway. So the next time you feel that pull to justify your choices, pause. Ask yourself, what am I trying to protect? Your truth doesn't need defending. Your worth doesn't need translation. When you live from that place of grounded self-respect, you stop performing for validation. You stop trying to manage everyone's perception. And you start living free, because confidence isn't about being understood by everyone. It's about being at peace with yourself, even when no one understands you. Stop explaining yourself. Let your silence define your strength. Let your peace speak louder than your defense. Clarity and convincing are two very different things. Clarity is calm. It's grounded. It's that quiet inner knowing that doesn't flinch when someone challenges you. Convincing, on the other hand, is loud. It's restless energy disguised as logic. It's the part of you that keeps saying, let me explain so you understand why I'm right. But real confidence doesn't need to prove anything. It just is. When you know who you are and why you do what you do, you don't feel the urge to convince people of it. You're not afraid of being misinterpreted because you understand that understanding is not your job, it's theirs. Most people get this backward. They think being clear means making sure everyone else gets it. But clarity isn't about how loudly or perfectly you can explain yourself. It's about how deeply you know your own truth, even when others don't see it. You've probably noticed that the people who are most sure of themselves rarely over-talk. They don't rush to defend every choice. They don't argue with people who misunderstand them. Because clarity creates stillness. It's like water that's settled. You can see straight through it. The moment you start stirring it up, the moment you start explaining too much, you create noise and confusion. And that's what convincing does. It stirs the water. Here's the psychology behind it. The need to convince others often comes from emotional insecurity, that deep fear that if someone doesn't agree with you, then maybe you're wrong. You start equating external agreement with internal certainty. So you talk, you reason, you argue, hoping that if they finally nod and say, I get it, it'll make your decision feel legitimate. But it never works, because truth doesn't need a vote. Confidence doesn't need an audience. When you act from clarity, you don't need to announce or justify your moves. You simply make them. There's a reason the most powerful people speak less, not because they don't care, but because they don't chase understanding from the unwilling. They know that over-explaining doesn't make people understand you. It just gives them more angles to attack your reasoning. The more you try to defend a boundary, the more it looks negotiable. Think about it when you say no and then immediately start listing all your reasons. You're not being assertive. You're being apologetic. You're trying to soften your truth so it doesn't upset anyone. But a boundary wrapped in apology is a boundary that will get broken. Saying no with clarity doesn't mean saying it with aggression. It means saying it with peace. No story, no justification, just a clear, respectful no. Philosophically, this ties back to something ancient, the idea that truth is self-evident. In Stoic philosophy, Epictetus said, what is true does not need explanation. That doesn't mean we don't communicate. It means we stop confusing communication with performance. When you know what's right for you, you don't need to make others approve it before you act on it. You stop seeking consensus and start practicing conviction. And the irony is, when you stop trying to convince others, people actually start respecting you more, because silence backed by certainty creates gravity. It pulls people in. They may not always agree with you, but they can feel that you mean what you say. They can feel the steadiness in your tone. You stop sounding defensive and you start sounding decisive. That's the energy people trust. It's not about arrogance. It's about alignment. When you're aligned internally, your words carry weight even when they're few. When you're misaligned, when you're unsure, your words scatter, trying to fill the gap that your conviction should be holding. That's why you can sense when someone is pretending to be confident. Their sentences are longer. Their tone is tighter. They're selling what they don't fully own yet. Clarity comes from ownership, from doing the internal work of knowing your reasons, your limits, your direction. Once you have that, other people's opinions become just data points, not verdicts. You can listen to feedback without feeling defensive because your self-worth isn't on trial anymore. You already passed that test the moment you decided to live by your own standards instead of everyone else's expectations. And here's the deeper truth. People often don't understand clarity because it threatens their comfort. When you're clear, you stop fitting into their boxes. You stop playing roles that